I've been thinking a lot about what I went through that night a couple of years back. I've never had the chance to process it. I think when you go through something traumatic or unusual, you compartmentalize it to the point where it feels like it happened to somebody else. That's what it feels like to me. Back then, I was living in a suburb near Pittsburgh. I was making ends meet, but margins were slim, and the notion of owning my own house felt like a dream at best. I'd been dating a girl for 2 years, looking for the perfect time to propose, but I just couldn't find the right time and place. But my fortunes were about to change. I got offered a promotion at my job. I'd be a shift manager in a large chemical plant in a couple of weeks. But even better, I got an email about something that might be the perfect time and place for me to finally propose. I was subscribed to a newsletter for a particular singer-songwriter that my girlfriend and I both enjoyed. The first thing we'd ever bonded over was music. There was a promotional campaign where there would be a sneak release of tickets to an upcoming tour, and the first 30 in line would be offered backstage passes. I couldn't imagine a better place to pop the question. Maybe I could get a chance to do it on stage if I asked nicely. But it had to be a surprise, so I kept it to myself. I made up an excuse about going to see my brother and packed a campout kit to get in line well and early. The newsletter recommended all of those interested to be in line at least 24 hours ahead of the ticket release. Please be patient and understanding, the email read, and please wait in line. I drove out there early Saturday morning. They'd arranged it as a sort of a pop-up store. It was going to have all kinds of merch, and by opening day, there'd be plenty of people dropping by to get ordinary tickets. But I'd be one of those 30 who got the good ones, come hell or high water. It was awkward getting there, though. They'd shut down 3 of the roads for maintenance, making me zigzag between cones and waiting for traffic in opposing lanes to take a turn. There was an apartment complex nearby, but that had been tented up for fumigation. A couple of nearby stores were shut down after health inspections. All in all, it was just bad timing, and there would be no comforts. But I got a bunch of gear packed. I'd be fine. I had an audiobook, some TV shows, and a lawn chair with a slot for an attachable umbrella. I could sit out there for days if need be. As with most pop-up events, there was no big sign, and the location was closed with metal shutters out front. The only thing that showed that this was the place was a discreet little poster on the side of the door that read, "You made it!" The newsletter had mentioned that particular poster. It was all designed in a way to make the release feel exclusive. I got there about 23 hours early, and my heart sank. There were already people in line. Luckily, I only counted 27, but for a short moment I was ready to throw in the towel. I got to the back of the line, did a second and third count, and breathed a sigh of relief. As long as no one cut in line, I was in the green. So I set up my chair, attached an umbrella to my chair, and got started on the first season of Monk. After a couple of hours, the line had grown to about 50 people before slowing down. Maybe those in the back were hoping people up front would either drop out, or maybe they hoped there'd be extra tickets. The email had mentioned that there might be a couple of extras, but it couldn't be guaranteed. But I was still in the green, so I didn't have to worry all that much. It wasn't an unpleasant place to stay. The building was facing away from the sun, and there wasn't any traffic nearby because all the maintenance. I think the crews had stopped working for the weekend because there was little to no machine noise. I didn't hear a single jackhammer or concrete mixer, just the ambience of the city and the murmur of the people in line. There was a bit of a tussle up front. This one woman was getting up and talking to people. She was hard to miss. She had this neon green band shirt and blue-colored hair. You could see her from a mile away. She went down the line asking if anyone had any antihistamines, allergy pills. She was having some sort of reaction. Turns out no one had any, so she had to head off to find some. There was a drugstore a couple of blocks away, and the guy next to her promised she could keep her spot. So she walked away, thanking those around her for being so understanding. Thing is, she never came back. Hours later, her spot was still vacant. By dinner time, I kicked up a conversation with the guy next to me. He'd arrived just after I did, so he was still among the first 30. His name was Rodney, and he had this lean metalhead kind of build. Arms covered in tattoos, and those kinds of pants with zippers that you can turn into shorts. It didn't look like his kind of venue. "I'm surprising my girl," Rodney smiled. "She loves this stuff." "Same here," I said. I think I might pop the question. Congrats. Love to see it. He offered me a Coke and I took it. He hadn't prepared himself quite like I had, so I offered him a pad to watch some shows while I listened to my audiobook. We shared a couple of stories, some snacks, and added one another to our socials. I chomped down on a cold burrito for dinner and took a nap. Rodney was on his phone talking to a friend for a bit. The people ahead of me were having a conversation of their own, and I only caught parts of it. They were discussing if there were 30 available tickets in total, or if there were more tickets given out to the first 30 people. Was there only one ticket per person? Because if all in line wanted 2 or more, that'd be over 60 in total. The email hadn't specified it, so they were a bit worried. I had no idea, but there was no point in arguing about it. We'd see in about a day. There was this one guy who was a couple of spots ahead of me that had to step out of line. He had a friend coming by to drop off some stuff, so he asked if they could hold his spot for a bit. It'd just be a couple of minutes. I saw him disappear around the corner, doing that I'm in a bit of a hurry kind of jog that polite people do. A couple of minutes passed, then half an hour. After a full hour, he still wasn't back. Isn't that strange? I said to Rodney. 2 people have gone to get something and none came back. Sure, yeah, strange, he nodded. But some people just say those things to get an excuse to leave. It's embarrassing to say you're bored, you know. I guess. It's just strange. I work at the hospital, he said. I'm an anesthesiologist. I know what people who crack under pressure looks like. They always shuffle away with a convenient excuse. You sure that's it? I asked. Nah, but I got no other explanation. Fair enough. As the sun dipped below the horizon, the sounds of the city lowered to a mumble. Cars gave way to people walking their dogs, and in this particular neighborhood, there was a lot of those. There were a couple more people who got out of line and walked away, not to return. We were still well over 40 though, but I think some got cold feet as the city got dark. A couple of light posts from a nearby street cast long shadows across the pavement. I was having a nap when Rodney poked me. He looked confused. Some folks in the back are saying we're in the wrong line. They're opening some name brand store. There ain't no ticket sales. You shitting me? I scoffed. You can't be serious. A guy 3 steps ahead looked back. This ain't no store opening, he called back. It's an autograph signing. That kicked up a murmur. All of a sudden, the entire line was talking. There was some confusion about what we were actually doing out there. A lot of people were there for tickets, but for different artists. Some were there for a shop opening, an autograph signing, or a giveaway. A couple of phones were passed around and shown so we could compare emails. All emails were from different accounts, seemingly official enough to get past the spam filters. They all advertised different things, but they ended with the same line. Please be patient and understanding, and please wait in line. It became readily apparent that no one had the faintest idea what this opening actually was. A couple of folks just got up and left. Finally, the guy at the very front stepped out of line. I'm not sticking around for some fucking scam, he spat. I'm going home. You should too. A couple more people packed up but hadn't decided what to do. I was a bit on the fence about it, but as I watched that first man round the corner, I figured there'd been some kind of misunderstanding. Maybe they were doing several promotions at once. I heard his voice. He sounded surprised and a little angry. What is this? Then he screamed. A blood-curdling, ear-bleeding scream. It got quiet. Everyone looked at one another, trying to find an answer to what was going on. I got out of my chair to get a better look, but Rodney put his hand on my arm. Hold on, he said, lowering his voice. Don't go. We should call someone. He agreed, but we could see other people were already calling for help. The man from the front of the line never returned. There was someone in the back who called for help. A few people walked down the road to see if everyone was okay, but they never returned either. A patrol vehicle came by about 20 minutes later. 2 police officers walked up asking questions. Everyone said the same thing. A man had stepped away and it sounded like he got hurt. The officers did a sweep of the road, and when they came back around, they shrugged it off. There's nothing here, they said. You're sure he didn't just call out to a friend? There were a lot of raised voices at that, but what could we say? It wasn't illegal to step out of line and not come back. There was no blood or sign of a struggle. Maybe we hadn't heard what we thought we heard, but people were raising other issues, like the emails we'd been sent. It all seemed like a plot to trick us. That, the officers had something to say about. "No, it's legit," one said. "We were informed that there'd be people waiting in line for some kind of event." They had no idea what the promotion was for, though. And even if they did, they couldn't disclose it. It was all arranged by an event promoter, who'd in turn been hired by someone else. All in all, there was nothing they could do but to wish us the best of luck and be on their way. As they left, I noticed them meeting up with someone walking their dog at the end of the street. They shook hands, looked at us, and went their separate ways. Rodney and I stayed up late. We decided we'd take turns sleeping, just to make sure no one took our things. I took the first shift. The line had whittled down to about 30 people by then. There'd been a lot of people trickling out after the uncertainty of what this was supposed to be. Of course, none of them came back. I didn't hear anything else, but there was this rising unease that there was something inherently dangerous about stepping away. I could hear a couple of people talking about it. That is, until a woman further back had enough. She'd been sitting quietly for a while, listening to people talk over her. "It's not a big deal," she groaned. "Look, I'll walk one lap around the building. I'll leave my purse here, so you know I'll be back, all right?" Maybe she was tired or frustrated. Maybe she wanted to prove a point. She stepped out of line and rounded the corner with a huff. Judging by the size of the building, it ought to take her a couple of minutes at a brisk walking speed. But as those minutes dragged on into half an hour, it was clear she wasn't coming back. She'd left everything behind, so it was clear this wasn't voluntary. Something had kept her from coming back. No one would willingly leave behind their identification, credit cards, or phone. A couple of people discussed leaving as a group. Someone mentioned leaving while being on a phone call to report back as they went. But no one wanted to take the risk. We didn't know what was going on, and no one was eager to put themselves on the line. Instead, we waited, speculated, and murmured back and forth about what might be going on. Was it a trafficking thing, gang-related? Or was this whole thing just a big misunderstanding? I woke up Rodney around midnight and leaned back in my chair. I told him about the woman leaving her things behind, and I could see something settle on his brow. It was a strange position to be in. We were either completely fine or in incredible danger. But which was it? Which made more sense? I had a nervous sleep. No dreams, just a stream of thoughts. I kept waking up for the dumbest reasons. A car playing loud music a couple streets down, a barking dog, someone throwing away a bunch of glass bottles. Just everyday city noise. Rodney had slumped against the wall, chewing on some licorice. When he noticed me watching, he pointed down the street. "They keep coming back around." "Who?" I asked. "Not sure. Some guy walking his dog every 30 minutes or so." "The same guy?" "I don't know. Maybe." We kept our eyes on the street, and just like he said, a man with a dog passed by. He was wearing a large coat and a baseball cap, and the dog was one of the larger breeds. Possibly a St. Bernard or some kind of sheepdog. "Every 30 minutes, Rodney reiterated. "I don't think he's walking his dog." "So what's he doing then?" Rodney shook his head and took another bite of licorice. "Patrolling." It was the middle of the night when the police came back. 2 officers, same as before, walked down the line with an audible sigh. "Someone called again," they said. "What's going on?" A young man got up and pointed at the woman who'd left her things behind. The police scooped it up, checked it, and promised to take it back to the station. As they were about to leave, the young man asked if they could escort him to his car. They agreed. As he left, he looked back at the rest of us, holding up his phone. A woman he'd been sitting next to held up her phone in response. "I'll stay on the line till I get home," he called out. "I'll keep you updated." It seemed to go well enough. But as they rounded the corner at the end of the street, I noticed one of the officers looking to the left and raising his hand, as if waving at someone just off to the side. We all looked at the woman with the phone. She was hunched over, cradling it with both hands, listening through wireless earpieces. She'd say something occasionally, like a quiet, "Yes, I'm still here," or "Are you okay?" Then, after a couple of minutes, her eyes went wide. "Hello," she said. "Dan? Dan, are you there?" There was no response. I could see the tears pool in her eyes as her hands started to shake. He'd promised to stay on the line. Something must have gone wrong. "They're picking us off," muttered Rodney. "Someone is picking us off." "But why?" I whispered back. "What's the point?" "Think about it," he said. "This whole block is basically shut down. Roadwork, maintenance, fumigation, renovations. It's just us out here." "But why us? Why now? There's gotta be a reason." Everyone was awake by then. We tried to figure out if we all had something in common. We all looked different, and we were all different ages. We were there for different reasons, and we lived in different parts of town. There was nothing readily apparent that we had in common. Dan works at a bottling plant, the woman with the phone added. I'm in retail. Others joined in. One was an airline pilot, another was a bodyguard, a firefighter, a translator, all very different people in very different lines of work. However, we had one thing in common. We all had access to something. Rodney had access to pretty much whatever at the hospital. The woman working retail had access to influential private clients. The firefighter had control over who had what shift and who would respond to what call. The translator could listen in on privileged information. I was no different. I was about to become shift manager at the plant. I could choose what and who went where and when. "Is that it?" Rodney said. "Is that what we're here for?" "But what's the point of taking us out?" I asked. "This isn't hurting anyone but us." The man walking his dog was back for another round, but now it looked like he'd slowed down a bit. As Rodney talked, I saw him stop at the end of the street, giving us a long look. And his dog looked, too. Somewhere around 3 a.m., a whole group of people got up from the back of the line. The idea was clear. They were going to rush out of there. Others protested, saying they could call people over to come help. "If we all call someone, we can make a crowd," a man called out. "We can leave as a crowd, and we'll be fine." "No, we have to spread out," someone else said. "We go different ways, and we go fast. Some of us are bound to get out." Rodney got up too, but his voice drowned in the crowd. Things were getting heated, and people were pushing one another. Angry fingers were being pointed. Phrases were repeated over and over and over. The argument was quickly turning into a shouting contest. "There's at least 8 people patrolling," Rodney tried to say. "I've counted. There's at least 8. At least 8. But no one listened. And as push came to shove, a group from the back of the line spread out and ran into the night. Rodney slouched back down against the wall, breathing heavily. We all held our breaths, listening. We could hear footsteps running down different alleyways. It started with a crash, like someone taking a tumble into a trash container. Then, one pair of footsteps stopped. Not long after, another stopped. And from a far-off corner, I heard this barking. A loud, growling bark. "No!" someone pleaded. "No, no, no!" There was no screaming, no gunshots. All the sounds just stopped, and no one came back. A guy from the back of the line called out to them, but got no answer. We were down to about 20 people. Some were calling home. Others were calling the police, but they weren't about to come back here for a third time. One called a taxi, but they couldn't find a place to park, so they had to stop at an adjacent street, which we couldn't get to. There was also this one woman with a face tattoo that asked to borrow a phone. Rodney handed over his. "I'm getting my guys down here," she said. "You'll see. I'm done." She made a call, shouting angrily for a couple of minutes. After the person on the other end finally seemed to understand the gravity of the situation, Rodney got his phone back. About 20 or so minutes later, 6 very tired men came wandering down the street. I could see the outline of holsters inside their cheap jackets. "We're going," the tattooed woman called out. "Y'all can come if you want." A couple of people got up. I looked at Rodney, but he shook his head. "Suit yourself," she continued. "We're leaving." We watched them walk away and round the corner. I heard them starting a car and putting it in gear. There was music playing, something loud with a thumping bass. It sounded like they were about to drive away when I heard a bark. But it wasn't just a bark, it was more like a growling cough. Then a gunshot, then another. The sound bounced against the walls, ringing out over the city. I saw a couple of lights turn on in distant buildings. Then all was quiet again. No one wanted to go look. Some people screamed at nearby houses, hoping for someone to open a window and look our way. No one did. The line itself was in complete disarray by then. People were packing and unpacking, pacing back and forth, hoping some opportunity would show itself. I wasn't immune to it, but I tried to stay calm. Rodney helped a lot. He was a lot more calculated than I'd imagined when I first saw him. He counted the people walking by. He measured the dogs. He listened for repeating sounds. My mind was tired, but my heart kept my eyes open and frantic. "I don't get this one thing," I said. "There's a timeline." "What do you mean?" he asked. "They gave us a time this would open," I continued. "If they're just going to keep us here until they've picked us off, why would they give us an endpoint? There's got to be something to it," he said. "Some reason for this specific place and this time. And what happens when it opens?" We looked at one another. Whatever was going on, there couldn't be anything good in there. Rodney brought up the idea of breaking into the place we'd been lining up for. A couple of folks were on board, but the front gates were barred shut and the personnel entrance was on the back of the building. That kicked up all previous arguments about calling for help, or moving as a group, or running like panicked animals into the night. We tried to bend a piece of rebar into a makeshift crowbar, but we couldn't get it to work. The place was locked down hard, and we hadn't brought anything to break through. We couldn't do it. A couple of people thought about collecting jackets and making a line so we could pull them back if need be. The problem was no one wanted to volunteer. "Nothing happens until we're out of sight," someone said. "As long as we're within view, nothing happens. So someone can go to the end of the street, look around the corner, and come back." We had a volunteer for that. A large guy in his early 40s. He brushed off our worries, grabbed his backpack, and went to the end of the street. We could see him the whole time as he called back to us. "There's a car here," he yelled. "The door's open. There's no one here." "Can you see anything?" Rodney called out. "Nothing," he said. "Not a soul." He turned to go back to us when he stopped. He looked to the side, and there was a hint of doubt there. Rodney peered up at me, then back at the man. "I think the patrol's coming around," he said. "Any moment now." Suddenly, the man started running back to us. By the time he reached us, 3 of us were up on their feet to catch him and slow him down. He was panting like he was having an episode. We looked back towards the street where a person walking his dog had stopped to look at us. "That's no dog," the man wheezed. "I don't know what that is, but it's no dog." For a couple of seconds, we all just stared at the stranger. There really was something unusual about that dog. Its back legs had a curious shape, and there was a shine to the eyes that I hadn't noticed before. Almost blue. A couple more people would crack in the following hour. One just straight rushed down the road. Another tried to leave, but was held back by the others. A couple tried to call people for help, or to have someone escort them to their car, but nothing came of it. One guy kept spamming the police over and over, yelling at the operator that if they were that upset with him, they were free to come down and arrest him at any time. By dawn, there were less than 20 of us still waiting in line. It was about 6 a.m. when I saw someone coming down the road, a woman with blue-colored hair and a neon green band shirt. I poked Rodney. We recognized her. She'd been the first one to leave, the one who went to get allergy medication. "She came back," I said. "You sure?" Rodney asked. "You sure that's her?" "Positive," I said. "Same clothes and everything." She waved at us. She was smiling and a bit bouncy, like she'd had a good night's sleep. In comparison, the rest of us were nervous wrecks. "I heard there was trouble," she said. "I'm sure it was a misunderstanding." "What happened?" I asked. "Nothing happened," she insisted. "Pills made me sleepy, so I went home. I just came to get my things, see what's going on." I wasn't buying it, and by the looks of Rodney, he wasn't either. Others didn't seem all that sure, but a couple seemed to relax their shoulders a bit. Despite my reservations, she got a lot of people up on their feet. Maybe they really wanted to believe that it was all just a big misunderstanding. And yeah, it was convincing. She'd come back after all, but maybe she was some kind of plant. Or maybe it was just someone who sort of looked like her. About half of all the people who remained joined her. They left together, giving the rest of us a tired wave goodbye. Some broke down in tears. There was this one woman whose face has burned into my mind. She was completely beside herself, shaking like a dry leaf in the wind. "I'm scared, okay?" she cried. "I'm scared. I don't understand what's going on. I just want to go home." She was assured and hugged and led by the hand. And slowly but surely, they all wandered off down the street, and none would return. About an hour later, there were less than 10 of us left. Rodney shook his head as he looked from side to side. "No patrols," he said. "They've missed it 2 times." You think we can go? I asked. No, he said. Something's up. He shook his head as we looked down the road, only to see someone approaching. It was one of the people who'd been walking their dog. Except now they weren't just passing by. They were stopping at the end of the street. A couple more joined, blocking off the other exits. One by one, they bent down and let their dogs off their leash. I looked at Rodney. For the first time, he looked scared. I could see his chest rising and falling with little claustrophobic breaths. We were being closed in on from all sides. "They've fanned us out," he whispered. "They outnumber us." "What the fuck do we do?" I whispered back. He got up and I followed. Others were taking notice as well. But as we began to spread out, we could see the approaching people moving to intercept. Then, the barking. I'll never forget the moment the dogs stepped out of the shade of the surrounding buildings. They looked almost completely black in the shadows, but they remained equally black when they stepped into the morning light. They had this ink-black, slick skin. Their back feet looked like something from a bird, and the entire body was hunched over on all fours. It was more humanoid than I thought, and as they got closer, they stretched out. The smaller of them, at full length, was at least 6 feet 7 inches. One of them looked my way with a shark-like grin, scratching the pavement like an eager dog with long, pointed claws. I looked back at Rodney a final time, and in a split-second realization, all hell broke loose. Someone made a run for it, only to be tackled to the ground. One of the dogs got them by the neck and bit down hard with a sickening snap. One guy tried to climb a light post, hoping he could get up to a window of a nearby building. 2 more creatures tore down the light post, breaking it with a snap as he came tumbling to the ground. They were picking us off one by one, killing us, feeding on us. A couple had time to scream for help, but the creatures targeted whoever made noise first. The 40-something-year-old man who'd gone out to the street earlier was tackled face first into the pavement and had those razor-sharp teeth dug into the back of his neck. My mouth tasted salt as morbid death smells crept up my nose. We didn't stand a chance. There were at least 12 of them, and they knew what they were doing. Rodney and I stayed by the wall, trying to make ourselves as small as possible. I got a good look at some of the dog walkers. A couple of them were complete strangers, but a couple of them I recognized from earlier. They'd been in line, just like me and Rodney. Maybe they'd been plants or something else entirely. The creatures were feasting. One of the handlers went up to the locked building and rolled it open as one of them walked up to me and Rodney. He looked us up and down as one of the creatures settled down by his side, snarling and drooling, starved and ready to pounce. The man adjusted his glasses, peering out from under his baseball cap. "We got any hatchers left?" he called out. The building opened. I couldn't see what was inside from my angle, being pushed up against the wall. "All done," someone responded. "Got them all." The man looking at me and Rodney was maybe 30 years old, with a fashionable beard, simple square glasses. I couldn't have picked him out of a crowd. He looked down at the dark creature and adjusted his nondescript baseball cap. "Which one you want?" he asked. "Which did you dream of?" I felt something to my right. Rodney reached out and grabbed my hand. Not because we were making a break for it or to try some last-minute master plan. He was just scared, and when you're scared, you want to hold someone's hand, so he held mine. The creature looked us over. A hint of blue reflected at us from its deep eyes. We fumbled for the right words to say. Some plea. Some brilliant last-minute monologue. Something to appeal to their sense of kindness and humanity. But the stranger with the glasses didn't move a muscle. He might as well have been shopping for groceries, and with that, the creature growled. It had decided. It pounced on Rodney. I held his hand for as long as I could. I didn't look. I remember the sensation of screaming, but I don't remember the sound. My throat turned raw. The muscles in Rodney's hand tightened, then fell limp. The man with the glasses took a step forward, shushing the creature. There, he said. "It's okay. Dream well. Eat." Bone crunching, sinew snapping, meat, and the smell of hot iron. I closed my eyes so hard my skull ached. There was noise all around. I didn't hear most of it, as I could barely make out anything over the sound of my own heart. There was biting and ripping, interlaced with the most casual-sounding conversation. "You got the shells?" someone asked. "No need, we're torching." "You sure?" "It's clear, we got a firefighter." I looked up. A couple creatures began to look different as they ate. Some had brighter skin. Some were shorter, fatter. I heard clattering as their claws fell off their fingers. Bones snapping as their legs straightened. Then, the man with the glasses clapped his hands at me. "Hey," he said, "you can go." "What?" "You can go," he repeated. "We're done." I got up off the ground and cleared my eyes. A couple of people looked my way, and I could tell they weren't entirely convinced. Some were armed. I recognized one of them as the woman with the face tattoo. "You're letting me go?" "Sure," he said. "We got a full brood. We don't need you." "You can't kill people and walk away," I whispered. You can't do that." He shrugged at me like I'd asked him what the time was. I stepped back, and no one followed me. I glanced at the creature gnawing on Rodney, only to see that it had started to gain his features, his face, his gangly arms. And all the while, the man with the glasses calmly shushed it and stroked its back. The others were setting fire to the building, using a can of gasoline and a strip of newspaper. I only saw a brief glance of the inside. Black rock-like fragments littered the floor. Strange organic formations stuck to the wall in batches of 3 to 6. When he noticed I wasn't leaving, the man with the glasses casually waved a pistol at me. Not to shoot me, but to show that he had it. "Go on now," he said. And as the fire flared up, I stepped around the corner and I didn't return. I came home in tears. I remember breaking down in the hallway, trying to explain everything all at once to my girlfriend. I told her about the tickets and the plans I'd made and the people I'd met and the dogs and the handlers, all of it. I tried to show her Rodney's socials, and as I did, I noticed he was posting. My heart skipped a beat. "Long night," the post said. It was just a selfie posted 10 minutes earlier. He looked fine, healthy even, but there was a little blue tint to his eyes that wasn't there before. No people went missing that night. Everyone came home, eventually, and from what I've read, there haven't been any incidents. Everything just keeps going like normal, like nothing happened. So, who can I call? What can I even say? You can't report a person not being properly killed to the police. I even texted Rodney once, and he responded like it was no big deal. "I just went home," he said. "I'm fine. We should hang out sometime." I haven't agreed to it. I don't think I can. I don't even know what to think anymore. About a week or so after all this went down, I got a card, an apology card with a sad blue sunflower on the front. Inside was a handwritten note. "Sorry for the inconvenience," it read. There were 2 tickets to the concert, backstage passes. I ended up going. I proposed. I think I recognized a couple of people in the crowd, but I'm not sure. Now, years down the line, it all feels like a nightmare. I can't point to a single thing and say, "Hey, look, it really happened." There are no witnesses, and in the eyes of the law, no crime has been committed. But I know what I lived through that night. That'll stay with me forever. And I know this was violent and ugly and sick. But that email asked me to wait patiently, and maybe that's what saved my life in the end. Maybe I'm still waiting, but for what?
If you enjoyed this video, make sure to subscribe for more horror tales.
Back when I grew up in rural Minnesota, my mother wanted me to keep in touch with my Scandinavian roots. We haven't lived in the Nordic countries for 3 generations, but there are still a couple of things that stick around. Behavioral quirks mostly, and a couple of traditions that have been with our family for as long as anyone can remember. Putting porridge out for the forest gnomes was one thing. Mom used to trick me with these dolls that she'd put in the snow and point to, saying, "Don't move too fast, you'll scare them." And let's not talk about dancing around the maypole. That stuff's just embarrassing. But the most peculiar tradition is the one about a Midsummer Night's Dream. I know, that's a Shakespeare title, but it's also a traditional Scandinavian one. It goes a little something like this. On the evening of midsummer, you are to collect 7 kinds of wildflowers. Then you bundle them up and put them under your pillow. If you do, you are supposed to dream of your one true love. Now, I have 3 sisters. They were all about romance and predestination, and I couldn't have cared less if I wanted to. But every year they'd walk hand in hand, collecting wildflowers and putting them under their pillows. And since I was too young to wander off on my own, I had to stick around. That is, until they decided it was my turn. It was my oldest sister who made the call. She was 12 and I'd just turned 7, but she figured the earlier the better. "You have to tell us what she looks like," she said, "like if she's tall or thin or fat." "I bet she's fat," said my second oldest sister. "Statistically, she's Chinese or Indian," said the other. "That's where there are most girls." I tried to ignore them, but their cackling got on my nerves. They gathered up some silky aster, blue-eyed grass, silverleaf, wild bergamot, blue sunflowers, and ground plum, but couldn't get a seventh one. They looked around but couldn't find one. I just wanted to go home, so I picked up the first thing I saw, sticking out next to a rusted-out barrel. "How about this one?" I said, holding up a yellow flower with a black spot. "That's a black-eyed Susan," said my oldest sister. "You're gonna marry a Susan," grinned another. "Little Susie Woo gonna love you who," sing-sang the last. I rolled my eyes so hard that they almost popped out of my head as they cackled and teased, putting my hair up in a bow. They bundled up the wildflowers and made me sleep with them under my pillow. I didn't notice anything strange at first. Just a night like any other. You have such vivid dreams when you're a kid, like everything just happens faster. You even sleep faster. But this was something else entirely. It wasn't just a dream, it was an experience. And the worst part is, I didn't even remember it. I just remembered it was bad. Really, really bad. It was so bad that I completely blocked it out. I don't even remember waking up, I just remember laying in the bathtub submerged in cold water. I looked up at my 3 sisters. They looked terrified. My throat was hoarse, and I was wide awake, but I couldn't even remember going to bed. "Does it hurt?" my oldest asked. Her voice was different, lower, careful. I shook my head. "No," I said, "I'm okay." "It sounded like it hurt," she continued, "like it really hurt. I think it was a bad dream." "Was it her?" asked my youngest sister. "Did you dream of her?" I couldn't tell. It was just a dark space in the back of my mind that made my pulse shiver when I thought about it. And yet, I knew the answer. "Yeah," I said, "it was Black-Eyed Susan." Now, I've been teased by my sister my whole life, but they never teased me about Black-Eyed Susan. They'd never seen me like that. I'd woken up screaming at the top of my lungs, rolling around on the floor. They thought I was having a seizure. They took me to the bathroom while my mom called an ambulance. We didn't talk much about it. They never had me checked for epilepsy, and I was perfectly healthy otherwise. They talked a little about it being some kind of allergic reaction, but I'd never seen a reaction like that. Over time, we came to this unspoken conclusion that those wildflowers gave me the worst nightmare of my life. And in that nightmare, I saw my one true love, Black-Eyed Susan. I wouldn't think much about that night over the years to come. It became this distant memory, like your first cold. But every now and then, particularly around midsummer, I would try to remember what that dream had been like, and something inside me would sink into this bottomless hole in my chest. It teased me. I could concentrate, and I'd see it, but I didn't want to. To have forgotten was a blessing, and I knew better than to challenge it. But it's a weird headspace to live in. To have concepts such as true love and marriage so closely associated with trauma, especially since all other couples in my life were perfectly fine role models. My mother and father were an extraordinary couple, and while my sisters had some dating life drama, nothing bad ever really happened to them. So as I got into my teenage years, I didn't want to chase girls and flirt. I didn't want to fall in love. I joked about it a lot, but the feeling of meeting my one true love felt like throwing my soul down an endless pit. I tried to rationalize it away. It was just a stupid phase, a quirk. It became like a fun party story to tell in my late teens. It was funny in a way saying I used to believe in such things, but there was an asterisk stuck to that story every time I told it. A little white lie. I never stopped believing in it. It started to really bother me when I was about 17. At that point, I'd been in short relationships, and I'd been in love, but I couldn't stop thinking that it wasn't real. That true love was out there, and that it was terrifying. Something that would make my heart sink into my stomach. So I decided to just bite the bullet and try the whole thing again, to face my fears. So that midsummer, I put together 7 types of wildflowers again, ending with a Black-Eyed Susan. As kids, we're very good at handling pain, or at least we're resilient. We have time to heal. But when you're 17, it hits differently. When I went to bed that night, I had cold sweats, and I couldn't stop thinking about what was waiting behind my closed eyes. Would there be a reaction at all? Or had I wasted all this time being anxious about nothing? I closed my eyes and tried not to think about it. I counted down from 100, then 200. I twisted and turned, trying to get the sweaty covers to stop sticking to my skin. At the slightest stretch, my eyes would pop open. I'd get this ache in my face from trying to keep them closed. But after hours, something clicked. My muscles relaxed, and I caught a whiff of the flowers from under my pillow. And something inside me screamed at me to turn back, to open my eyes, but it was too late. It felt like looking at the bottom of a pool, but straight ahead. A reflective shimmer, ethereal, but physical at the same time. Like a night sky that you can push your hands through. I fumbled with my hands, trying to find something to hold on to. There was this swirl in the back of my head, like having a large drink on an empty stomach. Something reached for me and touched my fingertips. Something as hard as fingernails. It poked and prodded me from different angles. A strange voice seeped through me, neutral, genderless, and with an unusual pronunciation. "Where have you been?" it asked. I tried to regain my footing, but there was nothing to hold on to. Just these protrusions from the dark. Finally, I felt myself slowing down. A steadiness. Control. Something came out of the dark. Eyes so black that their head looked hollow against the night. A vaguely human skull connected to an infinite mass. Like a broken flower growing out of cracked concrete. Muscle and vein contracting and compounding at every angle. Ripples of flesh with every offset heartbeat. It's been so long. Something wrapping around my ankle, tightening. "Come home." My eyes snapped open, but I wasn't awake. I could feel her wrapped around my ankle. I pulled away the covers and watched my foot turn blue. It was bending and I felt nothing. Then the bone snapped. I've never experienced something like that. I've never broken a bone, and experiencing a tromaleolar fracture in the comfort of your own bed is inhuman. It hurts so bad you lose bladder control, and I couldn't do anything but to fall out of bed and writhe on the floor. But the pain wouldn't go away. I just screamed. I tried to reach for my phone, but it's like it refused to let me reach it. A neighbor heard me. Help came. It would take time for the leg to heal, but bones mend all the time. But true love doesn't. I pushed the thought of love and marriage out of my life for over a decade. I would shy away from coy smiles and flowery laughter. Some people thought I had a problem with my sexuality. Others thought I was under some kind of religious repression. I tried to explain that relationships just weren't my thing, but it's hard to explain without a reason. If I was really pressed about it, I'd say it was a childhood trauma that usually stopped the questions. I'd do this for years. A string of short-term relationships where I kept hoping and praying I wouldn't fall in love. Anything to keep me away from that dark space. I couldn't tell what was going to happen if I met someone who'd make me feel things. Real things. But life isn't so simple. It would take me years. But when I turned 31, I met her. Lelia hit me like a summer's breeze the first time I talked to her. It was a birthday party, and she was invited by a mutual friend of ours. Lelia had been working overtime and forgotten all about the party, so she joined at the last minute. She showed up in an oversized hoodie and yesterday's jeans, spending most of the night at the snack table looking at her phone. Her enthusiasm started and stopped at bobbing her head to the music. When I saw that we were out of pretzels, I went up to talk to her. "Looking for snacks?" I asked. "Your mom's a snack," she snapped back. "All right, yeah, but I was talking about the pretzels." She looked at me like I'd struck gold. She'd been so hell-bent on the idea that I was coming up to hit on her, that it never even crossed her mind that she'd eaten a full bowl of salty pretzels. She snort-laughed, apologized, and I felt my heart skip a beat. I knew it was trouble. I liked her. Lilia was a work-from-home back-end developer. She spent most of her days trying to steer her team, though rough deadlines and absurd last-minute changes. She explained it as trying to teach cats algebra while falling out of an airplane. She cycled through periods of insane stress to weeks of coasting, which she'd made into an absurd routine. Clearly something she couldn't keep up forever. We didn't start dating right away. We chatted a bit and found out we had a lot in common. She'd been dating this one guy since she was 14 years old and had only recently turned single, so she wasn't eager to get back on the market. She didn't mind my vague trauma. She just liked being around me. I think our friends realized we were dating long before Lilia or I did. We just spent time together until one day when we didn't want it to stop. Still, I couldn't help but think of black-eyed Susan. No matter how soothing Lilia's snores were, I could still lay awake at night. There was a warmth in my chest as I imagined the smell of wildflowers from my pillow, an ache in my leg where I could touch the scars. If I were to truly fall in love, what would happen? Those nights came more often, from once every 6 months or so to every week. After having dated for about a year, Lilia was eager to help me get over the whole thing. She knew it was a trauma, and she knew I didn't want to talk about it, but she couldn't let it go. And of course she couldn't. She was in a loving relationship with a man who couldn't say he loved her, and all she knew was that something had happened. It got to a point where it was driving a wedge between us. She wanted to help, and I wanted her to understand, and I could only think of one way to show her. I had to do it again. On midsummer, we went outside to pick flowers. Lilia was excited, but her smile faded when she felt how serious I was. I did what I'd done every other time. I picked 6 types, and a final flower would pop out of nowhere. And of course, it'd be the black-eyed Susan. I bundled them all up. I could feel a phantom pain cutting into my leg, which gave me a limp. "So, what are these for?" she asked. "For sleep," I said. "And I'm gonna need your help." "Sure, yeah, whatever you need. If it looks bad, I need you to wake me up." "How do I know if it's bad?" I shook my head and took her by the hand. "You'll know." I did some preparations. I had gauze and painkillers. Lilia was prepared to call for help if necessary. She still had no idea what was going on, but I could tell she was nervous. Then again, so was I. Problem was, I couldn't sleep. I just lay there and she watched me. After about an hour, she crawled up next to me. She knew it was something that happened when I slept, but she wanted to calm me down. "I need you to see this," I said. "It's okay," she whispered. "Go to sleep. Promise you'll keep watch." I promise. I didn't turn my head to look. I trusted her. So I closed my eyes, let my breathing slow, and felt my head fill with the smell of wildflowers. It was like waking up again. A mild tingle covering my body, like being draped in spider webs. I blinked and blinked, but it was all black. A long, drawn-out breath echoed like a field of sighing flowers. Beautiful. A growth coming out of the dark, translucent, like living glass, hardening into soft marble. A woman, dragging her legs through the night, like she was trudging through a swamp. She grabbed me by the hand, pulling me along. It felt like I was carried through a current. I could see the bedroom from above. I lay there, and Lilia was sitting next to me. I can't really explain what it felt like. Sort of like watching your reflection blink. I could see her struggling to stay awake, nodding on and off. She was trying so hard. "Is that what beautiful looks like?" Black-eyed Susan asked. "I don't even know what you are," I said. "Of course you do," she said. "I am your one true love." The words slithered, a drawn-outs poisoned the air. I tried not to look at her. It was like the opposite of staring into a sun. The light in your eyes begin to die, and you can feel yourself grow colder, slower. "You can't be," I said. "It's impossible." "But I am," she said. "You love me." She turned her attention to the room hovering in front of us. I could see little tendrils creep under the furniture, reaching for Lilia and me. Long, finger-like limbs in layered scales, bending at painful angles. One pulled down her phone. Another moved a chair. 2 of them struggled to move the bed. "What are you doing?" I asked. "Passing the time." One of the tendrils closed around my stomach. There was pressure, like someone tightening a belt. It cut into my hips. Before the pain, I could feel a slight pop. "If you love me, why are you hurting me?" I asked. "How else are you going to get used to it?" she asked back. "Get used to what?" She turned to me. breath reeking of ammonia with every spit of a word. Us! A hand closed around my neck. My eyes flung open. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't feel my legs. I flailed with my arm, reaching for Lilia. She got out of bed, only to find that her phone was gone. "What's wrong?" she asked. "What's happening?" She had to cover her mouth when she saw my neck. She grabbed my arm, but the moment she did, something took hold of her. In the corner of my eye, I saw her getting pulled into the other room, clawing at the carpet with a terrified shriek. My left arm rose out of the bed, as if carried by an unseen string. Two of my fingers popped out of their sockets, like a painful countdown. I couldn't scream, I could barely think. No oxygen. Lilia came running back and grabbed me. She pulled on my arm, and something let go. I fell out of bed, gasping for air as she cradled my head in her arms. I could see color returning to my hands as two fingers turned purple. I didn't feel a thing, but I would in a couple of seconds. "Hold on," Lilia said, "hold on." Her phone was gone. She bandaged my fingers and tried to keep them straight. "I'm sorry," I gasped. "I'm so sorry." She just shook her head, trying to process what had happened. There were no words, we just stayed there on the floor. But I could see something in the corners of the room, little quirks and shades. Something was waiting for me to let my guard down. "What's hurting you?" she asked. "What is it?" Something broke in me as I swallowed my words, but Lilia deserved the truth. I think she loves me. Over the coming weeks, I tried my best to explain. Lilia was terrified. She'd never seen anything like it, and there was no explanation that could settle her nerves. It's one thing to know someone you care about has trauma, but it is another thing entirely to experience something impossible. That can make or break you. But Lilia didn't break. She started asking questions. Why was I targeted? What was this thing? What did it want? But things were getting strange. It's as if thinking about Black-Eyed Susan brought her closer to us in a physical, literal way. Like we were building towards something. I would spot movement in the shadows. I'd notice furniture out of place and hear creaking doors in the middle of the night. And of course, it had to be her. She was playing with me. Lilia would stay up at night reading about various Scandinavian traditions. The cast iron scissors under the pillow, the midsummer pole, the year walk, trolls, elves, dwarves, and gnomes. She gave me lists of things to ask my parents about, to see if our family had been targeted by something ancient or evil. But weeks would come and go, and we wouldn't be anywhere close to an answer, and the shadows would grow longer. Things would disappear. And every night when I closed my eyes, I'd catch a whiff of earthy wildflowers. Things would quickly progress beyond tricks and shadows. At one point, I was tripped while walking down a flight of stairs. Another time, something pressed down on the gas pedal, sending me straight through a red light. It's a miracle no one was hurt. Lilia wouldn't go unscathed either. Electronics would break or go missing. Odd sounds would wake her up at night. She told me that sometimes she'd see a silhouette outside the window, as if someone was trying to catch a peek of us. Every time she looked closer, it would turn out to be fallen leaves or a peculiar branch. It was stressful, but there wasn't really an option. What else could we do but to stick together and love one another? I don't remember the moment we moved in together. It just made sense, since we spent all our time together anyway. She just moved more and more of her stuff in, and all of a sudden her place was pretty much empty. So yeah, we lived together. It wasn't really a conscious decision. Lilia had a couple of rough ideas about what that thing might be. She had a binder with ideas ranging from Arthurian mythology to djinn and some kind of Polish bird demon. None of them fit perfectly though, and frankly, it was such an odd thing for it all to be tied to this one ancient tradition. How could this thing be my true love? What was I missing? We figured it had to be something connected to that very first night back when I was a kid, when they had to put me in the bathtub to wake me up. For a full year, all we did was try to make it to the next day. It affected pretty much every aspect of our lives. The way we slept at night, the way we cooked, the way we did our laundry. There'd always be something messing up the rhythm of the day. It exhausted us. Not just mentally and physically, but socially. We stopped going out. Hell, we barely even talked. Instead, we kept our heads down and tried not to think about it too much, silently hoping for the problem to solve itself as Lilia's binder gathered dust. But once the next midsummer came around, there was a difficult discussion to be had. We can't live like this. She'd sat me down at the kitchen table. The light bulb had burned out somehow, despite only being 2 weeks old. "I'm sorry," I said. "I wouldn't blame you if—" "I'm not going anywhere," she said. "You know that. So what do we do?" She looked around. The kitchen faucet was leaking again. "I suppose we ought to try something," she said. "You got any suggestions?" "She could kill us," I said. "We can't go there." "Maybe we don't have a choice." I just sat there in the dark, counting the seconds. She was right, of course, but that didn't mean I had to like it. As midsummer came, we decided we would do this together. We got a single large pillow and gathered the flowers together. We didn't say a word. We just walked among the wildflowers as a low rumble lingered on the horizon, a damp taste in the air as a storm brewed. But to me, all I could see was the woman I loved, and how she carefully brushed her hands against the tall grass. Even now, she could find something to appreciate. Tradition, ritual, and myth be damned. At that moment, there wasn't a force in the world that could convince me that she was anything but my actual true love. We rounded out our wildflowers with a black-eyed Susan. It was hidden next to a rusted-out barrel, as if trying its best to hide. But like every other year I'd done this, I'd find one. And with all 7 wildflowers in hand, we bundled them up and wandered home, hand in hand. We hugged each other tight as we went to bed. Some way, somehow, we would make it through the night. We had to. When I opened my eyes, something felt different. I thought I was standing in sand, but it was more like a fine, concrete dust. The moon covered most of the night sky, but I couldn't see any stars. There were black trees in the distance, leafless and skeletonized by years of thirst. Along the horizon was a single large tree, tall enough to almost reach the moon itself. An apocalyptic vision, if anything. "Who are you?" A melodic voice, kind but unsure. I turned around. "Lilia?" My first thought was that she looked taller, but that wasn't it. She was the same as always. It was me that had gotten shorter. My hands were smaller. I looked down at the 7-year-old version of myself, still dressed in my most comfortable childhood jammies. Lilia didn't really sound any different, but a child's ears hear things in other ways. She had the most beautiful voice. "It's me," I said, somehow. "You're really cute," she smiled, "but I don't get it." "I don't either. Maybe we're not supposed to. Maybe." We wandered down a trail hand in hand. There was no one around. No wind blowing through dead plains, no birds in the sky, no chirping cicadas, and no rustling leaves. Just feet on dust. "There's no one here," I said. "This can't be it." "Did we do it wrong?" she asked. "I don't think so. She's usually here by now." Lilia blinked, looking around. Then something dark settled over her eyes. "What if she is?" She let go of me and brushed her arms up and down in a self-hug. Something she usually did when stressed. We wandered around for what felt like hours. Nothing happened. No one came to disturb us. It was just her, me, and nothingness. No black-eyed Susan, and nothing to tear us apart. "Does this mean you're my true love?" she asked. "I mean, I am dreaming of you." "That would make you mine too," I smiled. I thought that was occupied. I thought so too. But there was no one there to challenge that claim. We just smiled at one another. That had to be it. Despite it all, something good had to come out of this. But no matter where we went or for how long, nothing happened. We started to worry. We weren't waking up. We didn't get hungry or thirsty or tired. It was just this complete stage of emptiness. We would walk down forgotten paths for what felt like hours, strolling past sand-burnt concrete ruins. I don't know how much time passed. It might have been days, it might have been months. It was impossible to tell, and Lilia always had this amazing ability to make every moment pass by in a flash. She was impossible not to love. Even then and even there, we'd make jokes and laugh, though I couldn't get over the feeling of being stuck in my younger self. You don't realize how much you've changed until you step back into old shoes like that. Then I noticed something, a flicker of yellow. Right there, behind a rusted-out old barrel, was a black-eyed Susan, the same yellow flower I'd found on that fateful midsummer night as a kid. I don't know how I recognized it, but I did. It was the same flower. It had to be. I picked it up and showed it to Lilia. Strange, huh? I said. Only one of these I've seen around. I wonder what it does, she said. You think it means... Her voice cut out. The light warped in front of me, blurring like I was watching through a thin layer of rushing water. I could feel a tingle in my eyes. Lilia looked different. Further away. Don't go, she called out. What are you doing? I'm not, I just picked this. I held it out and dropped it, giving her one last flower. We drifted apart. Something shifted. My head rolled back and I felt this intense heat settling into my head. Then a coolness. Someone trying to lower my temperature. Young voices terrified. Lilia drifting further away, screaming at me to stay with her. Her voice goes from beautiful to desperate to something else. She would scream how much she loved me, and then scream at how much she hated me. I would leave her in that place for what would equate to eternities, for her to twist and turn in a place where she'd have nothing but her thoughts and regrets, where a starless sky would seep into her, whispering things to do, ways she would play whenever I returned. Her head spinning with tales of jinn and mares and demons. It would just be seconds passing as I felt her disappear, but in those seconds, there would be eons, long enough for a body to forget what humans looked like, for a mind to forget what love is supposed to be, for a word or a phrase to change. True love. An ammonia-reeking scream reflected off a fractured space as she reached for me, trying to pull me back through the breaking light. A hand so warm that it burned my face. How could I be so cruel as to leave her for endless time to suffer? How could I be so selfish? Black-eyed Susan. Lilia. My one true love. Then I woke up. My head burst through the water as I looked up at my three sisters. I was 7 years old and still in my jammies, submerged in the bathtub of my childhood home. And as healthy young minds do, my memories healed themselves, sealing away a trauma for me to uncover years down the line. Life would turn out the same way. Awkward teenage years, short relationships. And I'd come back to that broken place time and time again, and she would play her games, reminding me of the betrayal she felt. And I wouldn't understand. That is until one night when I woke up alone. We'd gone to bed together, but only one had made it back. I'd lived a life twice, and I hadn't even realized it. I stumbled into the shower, set it to cold, and collapsed. I could just think of one thing to say. I'm sorry, I'm so sorry. Another view of the world from behind a shimmer, be it warm tears or running water. Today I'm 47, never married, no serious dating. I go back to Lilia every year, hoping I can find something to remind her of what she used to be. I've tried bringing things along, something to bring her back with me. I've yet to find anything useful. It doesn't work like that. Sometimes I try to stay a little longer, but the pain is unbearable. I suspect one day she'll kill me, and I won't come back. I suppose that's the only way this can end. I try not to think about it, but when I do, I try to convince myself that I will end up the same way as her. Maybe we can find solace in our madness. Maybe we'll live together in a paradise of dust and strange moons. I don't know. I don't think that old tradition just shows you true love. I think it will take you to a place where you can meet. But perhaps that place isn't what it used to be. Maybe there used to be more flowers and dancing. I've asked my sisters about what they've seen the times they've done this. All they tell me about is handsome men and blue skies. I guess we don't all go to the same place. After all, true love isn't the same for everyone. If there truly is someone for everyone, well, then we must face some hard facts. They could live across the world. They could have passed away, or maybe they're just not what you expected. But the older I get, the less I worry. Maybe I'll wake up in that bathtub a third time years from now. And if not, then at least I get to see her again. There must be something of Lilia left in Black-Eyed Susan. There has to be. Or else she wouldn't still be my one true love.
If you enjoyed this video, make sure to subscribe for more horror tales.